Hey y'all, JaemiO here, and it is FoodieRant Day. If this is your first time here, FoodieRant Day is basically a segment I do every Tuesday focusing on a food systems related subject. So it could be pretty much anything. So before we get started, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please also consider subscribing. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit the notifications bell so you can find out when new videos are coming out from me. So let's get started. So what I want to talk about today is taste of place. So that's kind of a big subject, but I wanted to talk about what it means in general as well as what it means to me. So about, I don't know, a couple months ago, I got into a semi-heated discussion with my aunt about basically my career path. Um, so I'll give you just a brief overview. So graduated from college about almost 5 years ago, and I turned down a government job basically to open a store with my dad. This was kind of a lifelong dream for me. He owned the store, or has owned the store, pretty much my whole life, but he rented it out for a good portion of my life, and he decided to open it back up. And so this was really exciting to me because I always wanted to work in the store. And so when I was graduating, my goal was to work for about 3 to 5 years or until I saved up enough to be able to start my own baking business. My idea was to hopefully do a food truck, maybe a couple of different types of food trucks, but just to do like some sort of food truck with a really good friend of mine. When my dad decided to open the store back up, I decided, well, I think I want to do that. I wanted to go back to school to get my master's, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I knew what I wanted to get my master's in, but I couldn't seem to find a program that had what I was looking for, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money going to get a bunch of different degrees to add up to the one thing I wanted. I was willing to do that, but I wanted to do more research first. So, I think overall, most of my family kind of thought that was a dumb idea. I turned down something where I would be making really decent money to something that was kind of unsure. When you open up a new business, you really have no idea if you're going to make it, how much you're going to make. And so basically, this would have been a minimum wage job. But for me, it made sense because I figured, well, I can take this year off, figure out if I'm going back to school, so where I'm going, and also get the business knowledge. I wanted to see, if something were to happen to my dad, I would like to know firsthand what to do with the store instead of making a brash decision. But I also wanted to know insider knowledge of a business. Of course, you can work for someone. I've been working for people for quite some time at that point, but wanted to know like really how to run a business, and I thought that that was an invaluable experience, regardless of the money situation. And so, so that's what I did. Super happy that's what I did actually. And so in that time, I did end up going back to grad school. I did learn a lot from my dad, and I ended up reevaluating. I said, well, I'll do 3 to 5 years, and I'd like to start a farmer's market. I still wanted to do the food truck business, but I was noticing some things in the area that just didn't make sense. And basically that was that. And for the past, I'd say 50 years, I think the mindset of my hometown has been, get an education, get out of here, go find a good job, go somewhere else where you can make more money. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But there's a big part of me that wanted and still wants to create more opportunities in that town. And I think a lot of that starts with agriculture. At current, and so this is actually what I did my thesis on, almost all the food in that area is imported in. So if you have something like a natural disaster or any kind of issue that's going to create a problem for food getting there, not only is the food not going to get there, but you also have a huge population, really the majority of the population, and this is farmers included, this that don't know how to raise their own food, have no way to raise their own food. Um, and it's not that there's not an interest, it's that there's no place really, there's really no viable option of a place for it to sell. And so while you could say, let's grow spinach all day long, if no one's buying spinach or if there's no place for spinach to be bought, then why would someone raise spinach? So for the past roughly 2.5 years, I actually have been working on creating a farmer's market in the area. I'm really pleased at how it's going. Went from me being the only vendor for like 2 months to having kind of inconsistent vendors to having a regular vendor, to having a few regular vendors, and that was great. It needs a lot of work, but I definitely think it's something that could revive the area. And so that's where our discussion got kind of heated. So my aunt's point, and there's nothing wrong with her point, but her point was, you could be doing this somewhere else. You could be doing, I bake, so you could be doing your cakes and pies somewhere else. You could be making a whole lot more money. You could be doing all these other things. And also, you have the local movement. Up north, it's much further along than it is here. Um, but it also would earn more money. And, that's great. But for me, granted, I know I need to make a living, and this is kind of where it went down here, where I was just kind of like, I just kind of let it go, because I'm very much a person where like I don't normally explain myself unless it's like academic or work related, because I don't really share my goals and dreams that often, and when I do, because I think them out so far, I don't normally have the energy to describe them to other people. And also, I'm very, yeah, I keep those things near and dear to me because they're my goals, they're my dreams. And anywho, so that's where, for me, we get to the conversation of taste of place. There's, I guess, the two things that I could say that really describe it best are, or there's a book by Amy Trubeck called Taste of Place. And basically in the book, she's describing how we talk about the regional differences with wine. We don't really talk about it with food. And basically, so there's a term that I'm not going to butcher right now that basically refers to, the soil and the region and whatever else that has to do with a taste that you get in wine, and how we really, really value that in wine. And so she was trying to relate that to food. So basically, like the difference in the taste of, say, pork in Alabama versus the pork in North Carolina. Um, and how some things you can only get in one area. There's a very similar movement through slow food, which is called Arc of Taste. And so basically, it's talking about foods genetically that you can only get in certain places. So, like, for example, crab apples or certain species of fish, things that you can only get in one place, and how that if we have everything that's exactly the same, you lose not just the food, not just the species, but you lose a whole segment of your culture. And so basically for me, and maybe this is way deeper than it should be, but basically for me, in my home, like there's hardly anyone who's growing anything that's edible. And of the things that are growing, most of those things are transported to Japan. Most of it is really feed grain. Once again, people have to earn a living. I get it. But my town also is known for being on the river, but yet we have no access to the river. We're known for crabs, but the crab population is depleting. People years ago used to make their own, sausage, raise their own hogs, and people really don't do that much anymore. I think I know 2 farmers in the whole bioregion that raise their own hogs. I think I know two that raise their own cattle, and they have such a problem marketing these things and creating a viable income because in our area, because there's things like Walmart, there's things like Food Line. We're like, oh well, I can just get it there. But there's such a subtlety in taste in being able to have something from where you're from, prepared in the way that you would in your home. And not home like necessarily like your residence, but home like where you're from. And you can taste it, you can feel it. It's more than a gastronomical experience. It's just something so much deeper, something cultural, almost spiritual. And I don't want that to be lost. And really, right now, I feel like I may be the only person that really cares about that. And if I have to sacrifice that for a little while, this is something that I would dedicate a big part of my life to. And in one way or another, whether it's professionally or as a hobby or whatever, would dedicate to moving forward. Because I think that you're losing people, you're losing culture, you're losing foods because they're moving away. Because there's no opportunities where you are. Food is a great decider of things. The main reason we make money or try to make money is to buy food. So currency was created for the to be able to obtain food. So to me, food is the ultimate currency. Not trying to ramble on, but that's important to me. It's beyond making money. It's beyond something material. It's something that I don't think anyone's paying attention to it. And this is what I did. Like I said, I did my thesis on this to figure out how we can bring jobs back, how we can bring back that culture. Not to have something fake, but just to have security. Because if you don't have food sovereignty, you really don't have security at all. Any type of security on a national level. If we can't control our own food, we can't control our own security. We think about oil, but we don't think about food. Why do we need oil? So that we can procure food. So it's so much bigger to me than just being able to make money. Not only that, to me, yes, you need money to survive, but it's not always about how much you make, but how you spend it. So to me, if I can make enough that I'm okay, I'm okay. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to struggle forever. I have done that a good portion of my life. I don't need to or have a desire to do that. And I know when to step away. But for the sake of future generations and even this one, I think this is pretty important. And I don't want it to be something that's lost. I actually have a friend who spent a decent amount of time in Alaska doing research, basically because Alaska imports most of their food. And ultimately what they realized is that the indigenous people to that area are the ones that have the most knowledge. You can do all the research in the world, but really it goes back to the indigenous understanding is so much more powerful in being able to revive the area than being able to bring in something or being able to import anything or create new knowledge. If the knowledge is there, then figure out how you can make it better. And that's what I want. And that's what I've spent the past 5 years doing, understanding my community better. Because I did move away for a while. So being able to be there at the store and really understand my community better, not just intellectually, but kind of in like a feeling way. I don't really know how to describe that, but understand the area, understand the history of the area, understand the people of the area, understand the problems, and then go from there, I think is important. So I'm interested in what you all think. I'm not mad at my aunt at all, but I think that's something that's just been on my mind, and that's what's important to me. And I think that if we had more people that cared more about the overarching principle, and I'm not at all saying I'm perfect or I'm right or anything like that, but I think if we had more of that in the world, then let's just aimlessly create more wealth. You have a point where you have enough, and we constantly research for the next best thing, but then once we get the next best thing, we don't necessarily put it into action. Go to food waste. There's no problem. Like I said last week, there's no problem with the amount of food in the system. It's how it gets distributed. So we don't need to keep creating ways to create more food. We just need to learn how to get it distributed better. So, like I said, interested in what you all think. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Of course, if you want to suggest any topics for my foodie rants, follow the link below. And as always, a special thank you to my patrons on Patreon for helping make this project possible. And see you all next time.